During this part of the book, the author tries to argument why he thinks that soccer has become a business. As a business, soccer has several things or several aspects that make it look like one. The first one would be some simple business rules that, if they're not followed, they would simply lead to erroneous decision taking and fatal results, possibly in the different leagues and tournaments. The first one would be that the best time to buy a player is when he is in his early 20s, as said in page 54. So basically, a player is most useful when he is younger than when he's older for several reasons, as his stamina and his capability of improvement. So, for example, if Real Madrid buys a 30-year-old that is equally as good as a 22-year-old, then it's probable that the 22-year-old is more viable due that it has more room to improve. It has a bigger prospect. Secondly, um, as mentioned in page 56, first, try not to buy center forwards. Center forward is the most overpriced position in the transfer market. And we could see this in the last years because of transfers like Zlatan Ibrahimovic and different players as Luis Suarez, which have been totally overpriced and sold for a huge amount of money, but haven't bring really um, meaningful results to the club. Thirdly, um, that that means that if you do buy a player, it's only worth it if you keep him around for the long term. As mentioned in page 59, after explained the situation in the club Lyon, which did a very interesting project in the 2000s and increased the capacity of its team, not by buying players necessarily, but making wise decisions according to the transfer market and also um, exploiting the capacities of their players. Lastly, um, it just if a player is worth less than what a club offers for him, it must be sold. And that's an obvious reason. If you have an arepa and it's worth 2,000 pesos for you, and they offer you 5,000 pesos, well, you wouldn't doubt it a second to sell it. But when it comes to players, clubs do doubt to sell players when they're offered a huge amount of money, even though it's higher than their value. And that's a problem because the transfer market would be such much simpler and so much easier if the if clubs made wise and simple decisions. Secondly, the authors mention how relocation is a very important part of the transfer market. When a player changes city and basically friends and basically his whole life, it is a difficult it is a difficult change, and the club must be willing to help him do this or ease this change. So, as the authors say, one of the recommendations is help your foreign signings relocate in page 57. Um, I would also like to to mention how the authors mention that poor decision making can come from many different ways, but basically are because of a after a bad year, it's very difficult not to fall into temptation of buying a lot of people. Clubs spend irrational incomes compulsively on players, and this is because no one in earth likes defeat, and managers many times believe that if they lose or basically if they don't win, there is a problem with the squad, and they don't think in many factors, as for example relocation, and as for example the chemistry among the team, which is a very important project, but as said before, in the long term. So basically, as the authors state as well, the managers think as if they're gonna be in a short term in the club. So they don't really care what they leave behind. But it's really important to think that a team must be a long term, and we could see this by the results of Alex Ferguson in Manchester United. After the first years, he was gonna be fired because he hadn't brought um, good results to the team. But then he conserved the team. He he did a great job, and he has become one of the best um, managers in history. So basically, the authors in this chapter help us understand how the clubs have so many aspects that look just like a business, and we could compare them to any business and they would be just the same. Many times in the stock market, poor decisions are taken, and many times there are simple rules. You don't buy a stock which is totally depreciating, and you don't buy a currency which is totally depreciating. You don't buy a house when there is a house boom, and um, there's are simple rules that are just the same but in soccer, and it makes soccer so much difficult because um, having a complex transfer market makes the squads, makes the players decrease their capacity, which is the most important thing in soccer. So many times it's not about buying players, but many times it's about just conserving a team, growing a squad, increasing capacity, and basically increasing chemistry.